Hey y'all, it's Kim again. So this is video 7 of the Biden Robert Hur interview with the audio and the transcript. I'm saying a little bit backwards, but whatever. This will be day 2 of that. This is actually day 3 for me because I'm having to break it up into smaller videos. But this will be October 9th, 2023, starting. Well, she'll probably say something about this right here, but let me get basically to right about here. Let me go ahead and start this. We're at 3 hours, 12 minutes, and 30 seconds. And just an apology, the last video at the very end, I kind of screwed up and didn't stop it fast enough. Sorry if you hear a little bit of day 2 coming in there, but it is what it is. I'm not going to edit it out because then I had to do my whole spiel at the end. So whatever, just listen to the other stuff. Fast forward to me if you don't like that part. But anyway, let me start this. We're gonna get over here to the transcript. Hopefully it plays. Okay.
The date is October 9th, 2023. The time is approximately 12:12 p.m. And this is the second day of the interview with Joseph R. Biden.
Good morning, Rob and Mark and company. Yesterday, in the course of an exchange about types of presentations of documents, some, cover sheets, bold, big lettering, others, smaller print. There was some question that the president would like to address about just how he sees whether there are any meaningful differences between these types of documents and the way that he handled them. And so I'm just going to let the president speak to that issue, or if he'd like to speak to that issue.
The idea, I want to make clear that I didn't keep anything that I thought was classified. And so the fact that I said I gave back all the stuff that had borders on it and the rest, I found anything else that was classified, code word, the classification categories, I gave that back too, or I didn't see it, one of the two. That's all. I'm guessing.
Thank you for clarifying that. I don't have any follow-up questions on that specific point right now.
I just had one follow-up clarifying question on that clarification. And for the record, I should say that everyone that was in the room yesterday is in the room today. Okay, thank you. So when you say you gave everything back in the clarification you provided a minute ago, when, like what time period or
7:28 on such whatever I ran across.
Whether you
when I was out of
office vice president.
No, when I was
vice president.
No, when I was vice president, I gave back everything that I no longer had the need to look at. And it was classified. That phone, top secret, or all those classifications. The question I thought you were asking me was when I was out of office, when I was at the Penn Bible Center teaching, before I got elected president, after I was out of office, what did I do with any document that I saw that was classified, that met the classification, top secret, et cetera, code word, et cetera. Whatever that occurred, I just gave that back to the staff, or left it on the desk to be taken back, but I didn't keep any of those things.
And you said whenever that occurred, when you found classified documents.
I'm sorry, just for the record, I think he said if he had found.
If he had found.
He's not describing a regular practice of returning documents that he found.
Were there occasions, Mr. President, after you were vice president, when you were teaching at Penn, doing all the different things you were doing after your vice presidency, were there any occasions where you found documents with classification markings?
Only ones I recall were the ones that had the big writing on. I don't recall having in my possession something that was code word or highly classified that was in the small print that occurs. I don't ever remember that.
So it sounds like, I wanna make sure I understand. There were occasions where you found after the vice presidency documents that had any classification markings at all. That's really my question.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yes.
So I can understand.
Was there ever a time after you were vice president, before you were elected president, that you found documents with any classification markings on them at
I
all?
think there was a notebook, I don't remember, that had marked, that red marker on it. Was that when I was vice president or not vice president? I returned. One of my staff guys, I don't recall ever keeping anything at all for my personal use as a professor at Penn for any reason. That was marked, was it had a government classification.
It sounds like there may have been at least one occasion where you found something, I think you described it as maybe a notebook.
You guys described to me my returning a notebook to one of my staff people that had classification,
You had a document like that, but inserted in the notebook.
no. Then you guys tell me that there was a series of papers stapled together that had red border on it. It was top secret or classified that I gave to somebody.
Vice presidential period.
I don't remember what period it was. Anyway,
Okay.
the point is, I never kept anything when I wasn't vice president or president that in fact was a classified document to be used by me for any reason.
So that's an important point, and we understand that point that you just made. What I'm trying to understand is, even if you didn't keep it, did you ever find it? And what I'm asking is, did you ever find anything that had classified markings after you were vice president?
I don't recall finding anything as vice president that had classified markings.
You mentioned a minute ago there may have been an incident with.
Didn't somebody tell me that there was a notebook that had markings on it, that had the binder that I returned? Did somebody say that at my staff? Staff, was that when I was vice president? Or after I was vice president. And I found the book, I found paper that had that red marking on it. And I gave it to this kid who's working on it. That's what I refer.
Do you remember that, or?
No, I just don't be told that.
Okay. So if you don't remember it, I take it you don't remember when it happened after your vice presidency. Is that
No,
fair?
because I guess you guys interviewed this kid for asking.
And do you remember, I take it also you don't remember anything about what was in the classified document?
No, I don't.
And do you remember anything about where you were when
No.
you found it? Okay. I'm just pausing to see if I have any other questions about that subject. Are there any other occasions, Mr. President, when you found classified documents with classification markings after you were vice president? I just want to make sure that.
Repeat the question, I'm sorry.
Yes. Were there any other occasions after you were vice president that you found documents with classification
When I
markings?
was no longer vice president, before I was president.
Yes.
I don't recall any.
Okay.
And just one follow-up, it seems to me that part of what you were trying to get across in your clarification statement this morning out of the gate was you're trying to draw a distinction between, on the one hand, cover sheets with big lettering, just let me finish my question, sir, and red color borders, things like that on the one hand, and on the other hand, smaller letter classification markings on documents. Was that the intent you were trying to draw between those two types of classification
Yeah.
markings?
Basically, yes.
Okay, and so now that I understand that clearly, is what you were trying to clarify that you may have seen after the end of your vice presidency documents with the first kind of classification markings, the big letter ones with the color borders. But you don't recall seeing documents with the classification markings, the second half that were small.
I'm sorry, I'm confused. I don't think that was his answer. That was not his answer.
Okay, well then what is,
He said he didn't recall seeing documents with any classification markings after he left the vice presidency.
except,
Whether they had cover sheets or they were classified documents with smaller headers and footers behind the cover sheet. He has no specific recollection of seeing those documents after he left office.
okay, and the
Is that
reason,
correct, Mr. President?
Yes,
and the reason he's mentioning the part about the binder that he returned is because he was told that, not because he has independent recollection.
I know that anything I found that had, when it was overwhelmingly clear that it was classified, I returned. You asked me how many times I did that, I don't know, but I did not keep anything that was marked, that was clearly marked, having been handed to me when I was vice president. That's the only point I was trying to make.
Yeah, and I think, Mr. President, you are making a distinction between something that was clearly marked, that's what you just said. It seems as if you're saying it's possible that there was something perhaps that was unclearly marked. And that, I think we're just trying to understand that, so let me ask a specific question. Were there any occasions when you found documents that had classification markings in small print after you were vice president?
No, but if I did, I would have returned them as well.
Okay, that's how that. We wanted to make sure we weren't misunderstanding the big letters versus small letters. So thank you. Okay, anything else on that?
No.
All right. So, Mr. President, when we spoke yesterday, Mr. Herr showed you some photographs, and there was one document in particular that you seemed curious about, so I thought we'd start with that. So if you grab binder 2, and flip to that very first blue tab. See that photo of a black notebook that says half-back 1 on it. And then flip ahead to the next page, which is it ends with 002. That has a document that we looked at yesterday, which is binder put together in the front of that notebook. And then in the next pages, you'll see the document itself. And actually, before I have you look at the document itself, Mr. President, is this, I think Mr. Burr covered this, but just to be clear, this half-pack 1 notebook, was this a notebook that you used as vice president, took notes in as vice president?
The date is 4/20/09, was that still vice president? I was, wasn't it? Yeah.
Okay. And looking at this document that's binder clipped to the front of this, if you look at the 4th page of this tab, it ends with 004. Right over here on that page.
1B66004.
Yes, sir.
Mr. President. Yes. Okay.
And first of all, have you reviewed this document before our interview today in preparation for the interview?
I was told about, I don't think I have.
Okay. I don't think we need to go through this entire document.
Mark, we'll clarify or confirm that, because it may be, as he sees it today, he doesn't recognize it immediately, but it's possible that we did review that with him.
Wait, hang on a second.
Yeah, take your time, sir.
This was the letter I wrote to the president about why I disagreed with Hope of the company about their assessment of the situation in Afghanistan.
Okay.
I do remember, I didn't read it all, but I do remember this being shown to me. And I remember the letter. And I stayed up Thanksgiving. Right.
Pardon me? I just want to note, this document, you're right, sir, this document has lines, and the document you reviewed, which is the same one, did not have lines. So that may be the reason why it is not familiar to you.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Mr. President, this is the handwritten memo that you wrote to President Obama over Thanksgiving of 2009. Yeah. Why did you write this memo to the president?
Is that, Mark, is that an appropriate question?
I'll tell you why I wrote it, but it's none of your business why I wrote it. I wrote it because I was trying to change the president's mind. And I wanted to let him know I was ready to speak out no matter, unless he told me, don't say a word, I'm ready to speak out. And to really, quite frankly, save his ass on what was going on. And I laid out what it was that I thought the situation was in Afghanistan at the time, where he was being misled, not intentionally, but where the judgments were off, and why it'd be so much problem for him. And I spent a lot of time sitting down. I think it was Thanksgiving Day. It was around Thanksgiving that I wrote this up in Nantucket.
If you look at page 22, the date is.
I just want to, again, just so that in the future, as we move through this, you know that we've raised the question before about unnecessarily or without clear linkage to the question of the location of classified documents, probing the president on highly confidential information provided to the former president 44 or to any senior members of the administration. So we want to be helpful, and if you can just draw that connection, it's going to be a lot easier for the president to feel comfortable describing confidential advice that he provided.
Well, the president seems eminently comfortable.
Yeah, Rob, I understand that.
Why don't we go offline, because we have very limited time.
Right.
And
Rob, I understand that.
points off record.
Right.
Page 22 is triggered.
Okay, Rob, you wanted to say something?
Yes, so we've had,
From back and forth.
Go ahead, Mr. President, sorry about that.
I don't recall me producing anything that was typed or in type form. This is NBC Kabul, subject, helmet used U.S. troops. I did not write that document. So I'm not sure why it was part of a handwritten document I wrote to the president, other than when I got to him, they dug up other information that was similar to that, what I was recommending. I don't recall the that wasn't from my hand. This handwritten stuff was from my hand, giving him information I thought no one else was giving him. I thought was critical that he get to change his position on what he was likely to do based on the advice he had given us.
Understood.
So to me, it was very confidential because I did not want to embarrass the president. I also did not want to get into just tell you one thing, it has nothing to do with the investigation. Understand what I'm saying? The president thought I knew a lot more about Afghanistan than he did and other members of the administration. He knew I had a real difference with the key foreign policy types, in particular, whether it was like a barrier or whether it was, anyway. And he was looking for me to make my case as strong as I could without him having asked for it and associated with it, because his concern in this period was he didn't have overwhelming foreign policy experience. And how could he take on the most premier members of the foreign policy establishment in his administration? But you said go do this. So he was looking for me to make the strongest case I could. So I'd be the guy, basically take the heat. That's the context of this attack. It's like you had a junior prosecutor, didn't want you to be embarrassed, knew you never handle a particular circumstance. He or she had done this extensively. You don't want to take on the attorney general on the issue, but he or she knew a lot about it. So you look at him and say, what do you got? And make the strongest case possible why the attorney general was wrong, or your U.S. attorney, whoever was involved. That was the context. And that's why I did not, ordinarily, if I did a memo this long, it would be disseminated. Go to him, go to the staff, this went straight to him, nobody else.
Was it common for you to write a 20-page memo?
No, first and only time I ever did.
Okay.
By the way, if I tried to type it, it would take 5 times more.
Okay. I understand. Given the significance that the president attached to your views and the thought that you put into this memo, Mr. President, obviously the decision the president made was a very important one. And I'm just curious whether after the fact you ever went back and revisited this memo to see how your advice.
No, I know how the advice. I knew the memo. I mean, at the time, I probably could have repeated for verbatim at time period. I knew all the points. One of the things that did come from this was we got a commitment that there would be an absolute time limit set to test the theories of the guys who wanted to win and do more, stay longer. So what wasn't just open-ended, we weren't going to put another 100,000 troops, we weren't going to. And so there was a time period, which was not what I wanted, but it was better than the open-ended, go get it, guys.
Was this memo, Mr. President, was this something that you consciously kept after your term as vice president? Is this something that you wanted to hold on to?
I don't recall. Did I have this? Was this in my possession, this memo?
Yes, to give you some context for this, Mr. President, it was found in the front of this notebook that's on the first page, and the notebook was found in the library at the Lake House in one of the drawers in the cabinet.
I don't recall how it got back. I mean, I don't recall how it got back in the book because I sent it to the president. I gave it to the president. This looks like the original. I don't think maybe there's a copy made, but I don't think so.
It was faxed, just to give you.
Oh, okay, that's why.
Yeah.
All right, now I got it. I wasn't sure whether I handed it to the president. It was faxed to the president, which I had the copy.
Right.
Okay.
You had the original.
Yeah, I had the original. I just put it in the book and that was it.
Okay. Were you aware that you had kept it after your term as vice president? Did you know that you had it?
I don't know that I do, but it wouldn't something I would stop to think about.
The reason I ask is it's been written about. Bob Woodward wrote about it in one of his books. Jules Whitcover wrote about it in his biography. So that's the reason I asked. Is if it was something that you wanted to hang on to because it was going to be the subject of reporting or history.
I don't think it's subject of reporting, but I wanted to hang. I guess I wanted to hang on to just for posterity's. I mean, this was my position on Afghanistan. And later became discussed, unrelated to my discussion. It became discussed inside the foreign policy establishment, as I recommended. And anyway.
I mentioned a couple of books. Yesterday, you mentioned that there was a book you were thinking about writing before you decided to run for president. Did you ever consider writing a book, a memoir, or anything else where you discussed the Afghanistan debate in 2009 and your position on it? Did you ever think about writing about that?
No, keep my word. I never thought about that.
Okay.
So I always talk about writing a book. I've been of the view, from a historical standpoint, that there are certain points in history, world history, where fundamental things change for using technology. For example, without Gutenberg's printing press, Europe would be a very different place. Literally a different place, because countries would not have known what was happening in other countries, parts of the country. You know, I think about a stupid idea, a notion. Nixon probably was on president where he used television, where he sweated, I mean sincerely, he was sweating so profusely in that debate. A lot of people thought he won the debate, but he lost the debate because of his. So there's a lot of things that I think are fundamentally changing how international societies function. And they relate a lot to technology. And one of the things that I was of the view that a lot has changed in terms of everything from the internet to the way in which we communicate with one another, to that has fundamentally altered the ability. I've had this discussion with the press.
Mr. President, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, I'm sorry. Anyway, that's what I wanted.
I
It had nothing to do with Afghanistan.
Okay, thank that.
And Mark, just really quickly, I promise it'll be brief. I just really would like to avoid, for the purpose of a clean record, getting into speculative areas. When the president responded and said, I don't recall intending to keep this memo, he then said, well, you know, might you have thought it was important to keep whatever? He said, well, I guess I could have. His recollection, as I understand it, is he does not recall specifically intending to keep this memo after he left the vice presidency. And I want these questions to be as clearly answered and recorded on the transcript as possible.
I think we should take a break. All right, we are back on the record. Mr. President, the only other thing I wanted to ask you about this document is about the typewritten pages that are at the back of it. So if you flip to, on the bottom, the base numbers, it ends in 0023.
Yep.
So this is a typewritten document. It's got a confidential, what appears to be a stamp at the top, and the top of the document indicates it's from the American AM Embassy, Kabul. It's dated what appears to me to be November 09. But the only question I have for you about this, Mr. President, is the confidential marking. Do you recognize that to be a classification marking?
No. I mean, confidential, they don't want to get around. It's not in the category, I don't think, code word, top secret, that kind of thing. But I don't even know where it came from.
All right. Are you familiar with confidential as a level of classified information?
Well, if I got a document confidential, it means it would mean that no one else would see it but me and be given for people working on this issue.
And are you aware that among certain categories of classified information, there's top secret, secret, and there's also a category of classified information called confidential? Is that something that you're aware of or not?
Yes, that's what it is. I think any document is confidential. That was meant for me to read and for discuss with the people who sent me the memo. So.
Okay. We looked at this handwritten memo that you wrote. Were there any other memos or documents about Afghanistan from your time as vice president that you kept after you were vice president?
Not knowing, I wasn't in there consciously made something that was kept in a notebook or something, but I was conscious.
In other words, you're not aware of this memo being part at any point of a larger collection of documents that you held on to on purpose or after you were vice president.
Correct.
You're not aware of that. Okay. And, so we talked yesterday about the house that you rented on Chambers Road. I wanted to show you at least one more photo from that house. So if you could, sorry to make it flip, but if
That's
you
all right.
could go back to binder 1. And once you're at that, you could flip to tab 13.
Sorry. Okay,
I don't think we looked at this photo yesterday, and I just wanted to see if you recognize this room that's in tab 13.
that's on the first floor. The main door. Door to the right.
And what was this room used for?
For meetings with people that, whether it was having to do with something at school or at school event, or with the staff as to what was going on in terms of what I was teaching.
Okay. Did anybody else other than you use this room?
I don't think you mean formally use it. No, but there was staff in and out of it.
Fair enough. I guess what I'm trying to get at is was this a space that was primarily something you were using, or was Dr. Biden using it?
Oh, no, Jill, Jill didn't want any part of anything having to do with sound of my teaching. She was taking. She set up a little office off the kitchen. But you know, just a round table and just a big kitchen. You know, it's kind of an alcove in front.
Got it. Sounds like a woman of good judgment.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it here. Then that way we don't get cut off or anything. We'll come back to this. We're at 3:43 and 7 seconds. Just a little over 30 minutes that we just did. Anyway, I'll get this loaded up. I may stop for today. I'm not sure yet. I'm probably gonna get lunch or something, and then maybe see about coming back to this. My legs are starting to hurt because I took my walk this morning. But anyway, I'm at a standing kind of situation here. I'll talk to y'all later. Have a great afternoon. Bye.